This is an analysis of Meghan's words in her interview with Oprah. I'll be using the methods statement analysis, SA, and conversation analysis, CA, methods I'm educated in and teach students about. The primary purpose of SA is deception detection, whereas CA deals with all kinds of interactional phenomena, ranging from everyday conversations to talk shows. Both methods agree that language is meaningful and should be analyzed as such, and both methods are detail-oriented. Within both methods, it's understood that people want to tell the truth, which is why the truth is revealed in their language use. SA and CA don't allow preconceived ideas. They only allow conclusions based on each individual's language in each individual context. So as analysts, we go where the evidence leads. I'll point out unreliable language and language that reveals a self-serving agenda in spite of what Meghan claims to be her reason for participating. Due to copyright issues, this analysis is based solely on the Sun's full transcript of the interview. I'll be focusing on the most essential parts of Meghan's answers. This is also the formal way of doing SA, independent of body language and cinematography. Like and subscribe for more videos about language analysis. Thank you. Meghan says she would say she went into it naively. Here, she's not being assertive. She doesn't say she actually went into it naively. Would say modifies her statement and points to controversy, either because she knows she didn't only go into it naively, or because she knows there are different opinions about this. She moderates this utterance with much, so she did know something about the royal family. We don't know what much implies, but must rely on whatever definition she uses. Next, we notice a linguistic concept that's going to form a pattern in her answers: association. People prefer associating with other people, especially when speaking about unpleasant topics. It removes responsibility, and it normalizes what they've done or what they're thinking. When analyzing someone's words, we should ask, how else could this person have formulated this? Meghan could have said that she personally hadn't done sufficient research, but instead she goes back to her childhood and associates with her family that it wasn't an issue they discussed. This leads her to use the collectivizing pronoun we rather than the singular and isolated I, which would have been more uncomfortable. Pronouns are considered highly important in SA because we learn them from an early age: what's mine, what's yours, what's theirs, etc. They point to ownership, what the person's willing to take ownership of. Pronoun shifts should always be noted because they are often a sign of diversion, that the person seeks to share their guilt. Oprah tries to bring Meghan back to the personal pronoun I with this question. 3 times Oprah says you, so it's now expected that Meghan initiates her answer with I, but instead she says we. In the context of thinking about her future role, she uses I only once in this passage, and she modifies with fully. Notice, she doesn't say that she didn't understand what the job was. She says she didn't fully understand it. In SA, we're attentive to these kinds of details, because whatever's on a person's mind will manifest itself in their language. Also, linguistically, fully takes some of the pressure off of Meghan, because it's her own definition. No matter if someone objected that she must have understood it, she could say yes, but not fully. It's a quote-unquote getaway word, one that gives her leeway to modify her statement at a later point if necessary. We observe personal pronoun omission when she says there was no way to understand the day-to-day tasks. This omission means that she doesn't include herself. There's no I or me, so she's generalizing this experience. She does this here as well. She doesn't say that she had this image, but that it's easy to have this image. There's a slight but important difference. She associates with Americans, and she uses the pronoun you, not I, again generalizing. Next, Oprah and Meghan talk about Kate Middleton, the wife of Prince Harry's older brother. On one occasion, Kate made Meghan cry. First, answering that the reverse happened. A distancing and vague formulation points to information that Meghan wishes to withhold for understandable reasons. This distancing formulation corresponds to her saying that she doesn't want to be disparaging to anyone. Anyone is unspecified. She doesn't mention Kate's name. This changes in a moment. In essay, it's understood that information stated in the negative is sensitive to the person stating it. When a person says, "I don't want to lie to you," the thought of lying has crossed their mind for some reason before they preface the concept of lying with a negation. We're interested in noting negative formulations because they often indicate ulterior motives on the speaker's part. Here, I don't say that to be disparaging is a linguistic self-defense mechanism that points to Meghan having thought exactly this, and critics of her would be entitled to ask, why bring it up if there's a chance it could be disparaging to someone and you don't want to be disparaging to anyone? Meghan's obviously running the risk of being disparaging to Kate. She gives a subtle self-praise with these words, while also discreetly emphasizing that she was the hurt one. When speaking about her own alleged accountability, she has no problem using the personal pronoun I. There's a highly self-serving aspect to Meghan's formulations, which is surprising considering the fact that later on, she says she participates in this interview for the sake of other people. Meghan says would have never, not I didn't want. First, would have is a so-called distancing verb choice, telling us what she would have never wanted, not what she actually didn't want. She's speaking generally, not specifically. In contrast, I didn't want is a so-called reliable denial because it's specific to the thought process she mentions. Never is a general and distancing word that's often used by deceptive people in police interviews, like I would never hurt her. It's unreliable because the person doesn't deny the specific action of having hurt her. Even though a person wouldn't hurt someone, they still could have hurt someone. The two expressions are not mutually exclusive. This is not a police interview, but the type of denial is the same. She's not denying that she wanted this. She's stating that this is something she would in no way want. We notice a subtle self-praise again with her statement that she supposedly protected Kate, at least protected her up until this very interview. Here we again observe personal pronoun omission, which is a way of avoiding direct critique of Kate. There's no she or her pointing to Kate. But even though these pronouns are not present, we should note that Meghan does say this. Her critique of Kate may be quote-unquote polite, but the meaning of the critique is still there. Seemingly polite ways of phrasing this doesn't change the content and the meaning of these formulations. And notice what she does with this associating linguistic element, whatever everyone else was doing. She's pointing to Kate as the odd one out. Looking at Meghan's own words, we're able to conclude two consistent patterns. First, self-praise, and second, a need for association for self-serving purposes. Again, we should ask, why is actually used by the speaker? It's a quote-unquote unnecessary word, since a statement would be perfectly understandable without this word. Unnecessary words are noteworthy because by their very presence, they're sensitive to the person uttering them. The purpose of the word is to modify the level of fairness. So this is not a straightforward answer. Here, Meghan's emphasizing her supposed ability to forgive. Combined with the other instances of self-praise, this statement points to Meghan being the protagonist in the narrative she's creating. I'll return to the concept of narrative in a moment. Meghan's language consistently removes responsibility from her. Things happen to her, and she's again making her case through association, through the words of other people, in this case the wedding guests. Previously, Meghan said that she didn't want to be disparaging to anyone. What she says here is not in and of itself a contradiction of this, but it is worth noting that she opens for a wide range of speculations by saying it's a good question, something that could indeed be seen as disparaging and also damaging to the institution, as she calls it. Again, we observe the rule of the negative in Meghan's answer. In general, truthful people tell us what they do think, what they are, etc. When someone's framing something in the negative, the information they give is sensitive to them, because the opposite thought has entered their mind for some reason. Also, with in any way, we observe unnecessary language again. Unnecessary language is there to persuade. We call it overly convincing language. It's not necessarily deceptive, but along with answering in the negative, we have the basic components of a typical unreliable denial. Linguistically, looking at her own words, we can't say that she doesn't want to be disparaging to Kate. She may very well want to be. Next, she associates with people. She doesn't mention her own self-interest, but comes across as a people person, as if she's doing this for the people. This corresponds to her narrative with her as the main protagonist. With In My World, Meghan makes a very sharp distinction between her life in the royal family and her own background, making it very clear where she belongs. This distinction becomes important in a moment. Again, Meghan stresses that other people observe the same as she does now. She's making her case through the words of other people. What she says may very well have been the case, but the interesting thing is that she finds it important to highlight. What's important to the person speaking is important to the analyst. Once more, this is association. Earlier, Meghan used the word institution, and now she says family business. These words are not derogatory in and of themselves, since they can be used to describe the British royal family. However, combined with her previous expression in my world, one could make the case that these words have the exact kind of disparaging connotations that she claimed she didn't want to engage in. No matter what, these are distancing terms. She uses the word family, but it's obviously not a family that she thinks of as family. Meghan's countering objections, another common rhetorical device, by again portraying herself as a considerate person. In the process, she taps into the opinion of the general public, how much Harry's lost, his mother Diana being the most significant loss. Linguistically, Meghan knows how to protect and present herself in a favorable light. What follows the conjunction but is the syntactically most prominent part of an utterance or a sentence. It's what we really mean, what we really want to say, like when we say yes but or I know but. Therefore, the function of this conjunction is to minimize or negate that which preceded it, in this case being ashamed and also Harry's loss. So the concern she had for herself was more important to her. Just is a so-called dependent word, meaning it implies an intended thought within the speaker's mind. It implies that she's thinking about something else at the same time she's saying this. It's conceivable that she was also thinking about actually staying alive, the opposite of what she's saying. No matter what, this is not a straightforward explanation. She uses the expression you know. This is an associating linguistic element, revealing she's acutely aware of the interviewer's presence. It presupposes that she's telling the truth, and it shows us that she wants to be believed, even though the other speaker, in this case Oprah, doesn't actually know if it's the truth. Notice her self-praise again. She's portraying herself as an ambassador. She's trying to make her story part of a general greater good, and she says she's sharing it for this reason. However, it could be argued that this is inconsistent with her word choices up until this point, because her word choices show willingness, albeit subtle and discreet, to criticize the people who've allegedly disappointed her. Looking at her language, it's more plausible that she has self-serving reasons for saying this, not altruistic ones, even though altruism is the value she's trying to tap into. She's trying to appear honorable, which is often projected guilt, that she knows this isn't true or completely true. She's now comparing her situation to Diana's. In the eyes of the general public, Diana was a victim of the press and a victim in her dysfunctional marriage to Charles. She's tapping into this victim narrative and clearly wants to share it with Diana. Notice this comparison rests on a presupposition that the situations are comparable. Some people would disagree with that presupposition. You have to understand is called emotional manipulation. The speaker's trying to control the interviewer's feelings and thoughts and lead them in whatever direction they want the conversation to go. It's highly assertive, and it's uncomfortable for the other speaker to contradict an assertion like this. That family is distancing language, which corresponds to her previous words, family business and institution. Here we could be inclined to say that Oprah's buying Meghan's narrative. However, we should pay attention to her preface, the way you're describing this, so she still manages to keep a professional distance to Meghan, as she should. Now Meghan's speaking on behalf of people and not herself. Also, it's a bit vague which group of people she's talking about. Normally, when a person's presenting themselves as ambassadors of greater causes, there are clearly defined victims. This is not the case here, and it can make her alleged purpose seem far-fetched. Meghan sees something she can use in Oprah's concluding statement. because she parrots her words. Nobody should have to go through that. In promoting a new cause, the mental health series. Also, she's praising herself indirectly by pointing to courage. I say indirectly because she doesn't say I, but even though the self-praise is not explicitly stated, it's implied in her utterance. Again, the way someone phrases something doesn't take away from the content and meaning of what they say. Meghan explicitly states that the truth is on her side. She doesn't make it a matter of personal opinion. She starts with recognizing that she didn't answer Oprah's question, which is consistent with her word choice, I mean. I mean is called a hedge, expressing uncertainty rather than certainty. Self-repairs are self-initiated interruptions of self-initiated utterances. Here, she's using the self-repair to make a statement less direct and less specific. She doesn't point to what she's lost. Instead, she goes from I to the distancing theirs. This information is obviously sensitive to her. She's finishing her statement as the courageous protagonist who's speaking on behalf of the people. And this leads me to introduce the final theoretical concept in this video, a model that summarizes Meghan's narrative in this interview. A narrative is a situated representation of a series of related events. Two categories make up a narrative. There's narrative form and there's narrative function. The first narrative form element is characters. There's the protagonist, the person we're supposed to empathize with, and there's the antagonist, the enemy standing in the protagonist's way. The second form element is theme. Theme is the meaning of the narrative. These form elements serve two function elements: identification between the audience, the narrator, and the protagonist in the narrative, and persuasion. This is where the narrator taps into certain values and behavior in order to get the audience to emote. Meghan's both the narrator and protagonist, while parts of the royal family are the antagonists. The theme is to highlight the alleged resistance she's faced. With these form elements in place, she's trying to create identification with the audience by claiming she speaks on their behalf. And she's persuading with emotional elements, like how she didn't want to put more burdens on Harry's shoulders, but also with more general values that are easy for people to relate to, as opposed to lack of personal freedom and a feeling of isolation. No matter what we think about this interview, it's clear that there's more to Meghan's words beneath the surface.